You never want to find yourself out on the water fishing without the essentials. So it's best to always pack a Columbia PFG Solar Stream Elite hoodie to protect against the sun. I mean, it provides great protection and it's really breathable so you don't get hot. That's a win-win. Columbia PFG has a lot of great gear. So before you head out on the water, head over to Columbia.com/PFG to shop their performance fishing gear.
Hey, it's Will Friedle.
And Sabrina Bryan.
And we're the hosts of the new podcast, Magical Rewind.
You may know us from some of your favorite childhood TV movies like My Date with the President's Daughter.
And the Cheetah Girls movies.
Together, we're sitting down to watch all the movies you grew up with and chat with some of your favorite stars and crew that made these iconic movies happen.
So kick back, grab your popcorn, and join us. Listen to Magical Rewind on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Hello, everybody. Hope you had a great weekend. Happy Monday. Welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmeelk. Matthew Citak with me. OTA number 7 in the books here at the Quest Diagnostics Training Center. We have a fun topic today for today's show. We'll cover practice very quickly. It's kind of the same stuff every day at this point, folks. There's a whole lot new going on, but we'll tell you what we saw today. And then we started doing this exercise last year, and I had a lot of trouble with it this year, I got to be honest with you. We're going to rank the Giants position groups 1 through 10 and kind of see where we think the strength of this roster is heading into 2024. So, Mr. Citak, how was your weekend, sir?
It was nice. Yeah. First weekend I spent in my apartment since before my wedding.
Now, back from the honeymoon, they were in Japan. We talked about this early last week. Was this just like, all right, we don't want to do anything this weekend. We just want to, like, chill and not do a damn thing?
That's what I wanted to do, but
welcome to married life, brother.
Of course, one of my wife's friends was getting married Saturday night, so still had to throw on the tux and go to a wedding Saturday night. It was a fun time, though.
You went tux?
It was black tie. I had to go tux.
Really? Were you in the wedding party?
No.
Really? So black tie for the guests?
Yep.
Wow.
Where was that? I'm just curious.
It was in the city. It was at the Plaza Hotel.
Oh, okay.
Wow, you definitely live in a different stratosphere of society than I do, Matthew Citak. Weddings at the
It's
Plaza.
One of my wife's friends.
Well, my friend went to one at the New York Public Library, and I was just curious if it was like
That's
the
a
same one.
that must have been awesome.
venue.
Yeah.
My wife and I actually looked at that when we got married because we lived on the Upper West Side. We also looked at the Museum of Natural History.
That would have been amazing.
Unfortunately, it was like, all right, you're going to write us a check for $50,000. And then you're going to start paying for things after that. That was just to, like, open the doors for us to walk in. And then they're like,
Crazy.
all right, we're out. It would have been awesome because I think they actually do, if people that are familiar with it, you know the big room with the whales hanging off the ceiling?
Yep.
That's where they do the receptions at the Museum of Natural History.
I'm sure weddings there are insane and so awesome. But yeah, as you said, that price range makes it a little unrealistic for most of us.
And we're off track already, but that's okay. It's the off season. We can do this sort of stuff. So my wife and I, one of the reasons we got married where she grew up, which is Des Moines, Iowa. We've talked about this before. We actually did our whole reception at the Science Center, which is basically their planetarium.
That sounds pretty
cool. So we
cool.
did our first dance in the planetarium with like all the stars up and everything like that. It's pretty cool.
Sounds
fun.
like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The best part, a couple of our guests had a little too much fun, and they broke out of the reception area and they started checking out all the exhibits where they weren't supposed to go. That was a little bit of an issue later in the night. You know who you are, but it was good times. We had a good time for everybody. All right, practice today. We kind of talked about this on Friday. I thought a very similar practice, Matt, to what we saw last Friday, where the defense and frankly the secondary was all over the field. I mean, they were just getting their hands on the football an awful lot. And there were plays, too, where, I know, take everything we say about what happens up front with a grain of salt. There's no pads, there's no contact, but the guys were getting into the backfield to kind of affect the quarterback as well.
Yeah, I mean, as we talk about seemingly every single one of these spring OTA practices, Brian Burns was, I don't want to say living in the backfield, but found his way back there more often than not.
And by the way, it's not when this happens, just for the folks, because I stand behind the offensive line a lot to see how the line's playing. It's not like he's like beating Andrew Thomas one-on-one. A lot of times just do loops and stunts and that sort of thing.
And also just keep in mind as we talk about this, the offensive linemen are not, actually blocking. They're not
correct.
Both lines are not like, throwing the hands at each other like you normally see and you see in training camp. So,
which is why you should not do any evaluation of the offensive or defensive lines from what happens in the spring.
Yeah, so that's why at least some of the team drills are 7-on-7s where there aren't even any linemen on the field.
Yeah, correct.
So while they're off to the side doing their own thing, 7-on-7. But yeah, Brian Burns, had at least one would-be sack. Tomon Fox got back there for what would have been a sack.
Dex had one.
Dexter Lawrence. There was the combined, was it Tyler Nubin and Drew Phillips?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Probably would have combined for one sack.
Now 31 and 21. I don't have the roster in front of me. Phillips is 22, right? Who's 31?
You had 21.
I had 31 and 21.
Oh, I thought you said 31 and 22.
31 and 21, I think.
Okay. Well, 31 is Nubin.
I'm trying to think who 21 is off the top of my head. I have to
21.
Look it up. I probably should have looked it up before we started. The roster.
I have a roster right here.
Check it out. Who's 21? I didn't have all this memorized.
Jalen Mills.
Oh, Mills. Thank you. Yes.
So yeah, they probably would have combined for a sack as well. A couple of DBs got their hands on the ball. Flott had a pass breakup on a deep pass. He had nice coverage, was running with Darius Slayton down the field, and Flott made a nice play on the ball.
Banks had a nice play, preventing a completion by Slayton on the right sideline, which is a good play.
Alec Johnson, was it safety? I think defensive back.
Defensive back. I think we should go generic defensive back.
Defensive back. He got his hands on the football. And Trey Hawkins had a couple pass breakups, including one almost had an interception.
Johnson's was almost a pick, too, actually. He got 2 hands on the football also.
Yeah. And then...
And remember, folks, this is all during teamwork, and people are going to say, well, what's going on with Daniel Jones isn't doing teamwork, folks.
Yes.
So just remember this. This is all stuff that happened in team. We haven't mentioned one 7-on-7 snap yet, just for the record.
Yeah, 100%. And then the other defensive play that I made a note of, Micah McFadden had a nice play on what would have been a screen pass to one of the running backs, and almost as soon as the running back caught the ball, Micah McFadden was there, would have tackled him if this were an actual game situation.
Yeah, Bobby Okereke had good coverage over the middle on a little Wando Robinson snap. It was actually the play right before that Micah McFadden play. So
that's...
And you had some completions. You had a couple completions out of the backfield. Deshaun Corbin had a couple catches. Isaiah Hodgins had a catch. Wanda Robinson a couple slants over the middle.
Yep.
So you had a couple. Lawrence Cager had a little play-action boot rollout catch to the right. So you had a couple catches over the course of practice as well. But again, I think it's good to see kind of this secondary defensive back crew. You could tell they're really adapting to Shane Bowen's system playing well, and they're playing some pretty good coverage out there.
Yeah, and it's especially encouraging to see considering that it's probably the youngest group on the entire roster. I mean, of Jalen Mills, I guess, is the veteran of the group, and he's been in the league for a decent amount of years, but most of those other guys between the cornerback group and the safety group are all guys, 4 years or less in the league.
And you can't play press man or play bump and run because there's no contact. So the fact that they're doing it under those circumstances, I agree. I think it's a good sign moving forward. And you like to see the wide receivers do a little bit more. But again, this is early. It's the spring. As Brian Dable has said a million times, no evaluations are happening now. So if the coaches aren't evaluating players, we shouldn't be evaluating players. Wait till they get the pads on. Wait till they get in camp. Wait till it becomes full speed, fully competitive. You start doing those joint practices, and then you'll kind of get a really feel for exactly where this team are. And that's why the joint practices, to me, it's always my favorite week of camp, because you get to see your team against another group of players to see how they compete. So,
yeah, no, I loved that last year. I made the trip to Detroit.
You were in Detroit last year. I forgot you were there.
Yeah.
That's nice.
I was there. We had a couple of days of practices with the Lions, and exactly, you just nailed it on the head. It was awesome to see, throughout the spring and even the first couple weeks of training camp, it's just Giants versus Giants, which is great. We've gotten to see a little bit of like Deontay Banks covering Malik Neighbors so far this spring, which is awesome to see.
Yep.
But as you said, I like to see our guys going up against other guys. It's the closest you're going to get to game-like situation.
They're in pads and they're going
camp.
full speed. They're trying.
Yeah, I mean,
they don't want to be embarrassed against other guys in the league.
No, you can see it last year in Detroit. Every single rep, every guy from both teams were going 100%. They were trying to make a play every single chance they got. And yeah, as you mentioned, the Giants will have joint practice with the Lions again, and I think one day of joint practice with the Jets in Florham Park. I believe Coach said that last week.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you. Has Dable said that publicly? I think he has, right?
Yeah.
So we'll have the 2 versus the Lions here because they're coming here this year, and then we'll have the 1 against the Jets in Florham Park. That's correct.
Yeah. And the only other note I had from today's practice, Theo Johnson just had a catch, sort of general run-of-the-mill reception. Wasn't like a huge gain or anything, but just the thing that stuck out at me was he's got, it looks like or feels like just such quick hands. Like the ball was not like directly at him, and he just threw his hands up quickly, snatched it right out of the air, tucked it back down, made a move, and started running upfield. And, his, I guess, development as a pass catcher could end up being a pretty crucial component of the Giants' success this season, given just the uncertainty around the tight end position on the roster right now. And, the biggest knock on him coming out of college was that he's not that, polished of a receiver. And so to see him just displaying like great, strong hands this early into his rookie season, it's just encouraging to see.
Yeah, and I think they think he can be a wide tight end too. He could be the inline guy. He's not a receiver only. Lawrence Cager is more of a smaller guy. He's more of a receiver only type. He's an F-move tight end. I think they see Theo Johnson, maybe not right away. Tight end's one of the tougher positions. It takes guys a year or two to really kind of adjust to the position. But I think they believe he can be a Y, where he can play inline and do some of the blocking stuff. And, one of the reasons I didn't have him ranked quite as high when I did my draft rankings, watching him on tape, I didn't think the testing numbers showed when I watched him in games. You know what I mean? Some guys don't look as fast as their testing numbers when they're in games. But I got to be honest, on the practice field, he moves darn well. He's not super like shifty, stop and start, quick side to side, but when he gets moving, he's moving, and he can separate for some guys. So I don't think he's like going to be this elite separator necessarily, where where Waller was when he was at the top of his game with the Raiders. Like I don't think he's going to get to that level of a receiver, but I think he could, with his size and his frame, he can be an inline blocker. He can split out wide. He can be very versatile in that way, which I think is something that Brian Dable with his offensive system really appreciates.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the speed that he has shown has mostly been, in my opinion, once the ball has been in his hands.
Yeah.
He's not going to, create 10 yards of separation on a route, most likely. I mean, I guess you never know, but that's not really his game. But once he has the ball in his hands and he starts running, he looks like a gazelle out there. It's going to be tough for a lot of linebackers across the NFL to keep up with that just speed and agility.
I think you need to find maybe a larger animal that also moves quickly. I feel like a receiver can be a gazelle, but I feel like a tight end needs to be
I guess
maybe
also
something a little bigger, maybe like a bear.
6'6".
Bears start moving.
6'6" is a big
bears
gazelle.
can get to 30 miles an hour, right? When they're running, bears could move. So maybe he runs like a bear. Do you like that? Or do you think bears are too big for tight ends?
Bears, I think
bears are more offensive
bigger.
line, defensive line type.
Yeah.
So what's in between a bear and a deer? Moose?
Pearson,
you got anything for me?
I like bear. I mean, they're fast.
Yeah, bears can move. Offensive linemen, they're elephants, right? That's what Sean O'Hara always called it. It was like the march of the elephants. So maybe
all right, if we're calling offensive linemen,
bears.
if we're calling offensive linemen elephants, then yeah, he's Theo Johnson.
Bears
runs like a bear.
Climb trees.
Not a Chicago bear.
No, not a Chicago bear.
A bear.
He was a Nittany lion, but I guess lion's not terrible. Like the big male lion, they're bigger,
fast,
but they can run.
Though.
You think they're a little too fast?
A little faster, I would say.
A little too fast. So maybe the F move tight end could be more lion. If you're the 2-way tight end, you're more bear.
What's up? I'm John Wall.
And I'm CJ Toledano, and we're starting a new podcast presented by DraftKings called Point Game. We're now joined by 3-time NBA Sixth Man of the Year, elite bucket getter. Let's please welcome Jamal Crawford to Point Game. King of the Court one-on-one tournament. If they had it back in your prime, do you think you could have took it all?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think I could have took it all, but I think I would have shocked a lot of people. I think Kobe and everybody in their prime, Kobe would win a one-on-one contest.
Yeah, because you got to think he's going to guard. He don't care about guarding.
He's going to guard.
He's going to guard. Like, you see him in the Olympics, he's going to guard. And then on top of that.
I'm not guarding like that, CJ.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sam Cassell to Point Game.
I remember you came out from crying, tears. I mean, he was in a culture shock. And then he's going through withdrawals about winning.
Remember what I told you? I said, OG, you think I can get paid and go back and play in college? You think I ain't it?
Check out Point Game with John Wall and CJ Toledano on the iHeartRadio app, DraftKings YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Fair enough.
I think we could do the position animal comparison on another show. That could be fun. All right. Other topic today, we were going to do our position rankings. But you know what? Before we get to those, and we will get to those, folks, I promise you, and that'll be our tease and everything. We have two guys on the line. I don't want them holding forever. So why don't we get to the calls here, Matt, and then we'll get to our position group rankings as we move along. 201-939-4513. John Soto Podcast, folks. I don't think it's up there yet, Pearson, but it should be shortly. I did almost 45 minutes, I think, with Cynthia Freeland last week. It was a really good interview. We talked a lot about her thesis and dissertation from Northwestern, to be quite honest with you, which was basically evaluating offensive linemen. And it was all about how she basically did body tracking, testing tracking, and everything in terms of how she can determine whether or not an offensive lineman is going to be successful. So it was a really, really detailed. We kind of touched on it when we did our combine interview in February, but we go deep here, folks. It's like 45 to 50 minutes of pure nerdiness on the offensive line. It's a lot of fun. So check that out, John Soto Podcast. It's there, or if it's not there, it will be shortly. Go download that, and you can find it on Giants app, giants.com/podcast, or your favorite podcast platform. All right, 201-939-4513. Jay in Phoenix will lead us off today. Jay, what's going on?
Hey, I got an animal to consider for Theo.
What do you got?
I've lived in Utah, Idaho, and Arizona. They're all over the place, but especially up north. But an elk. Elks are solid.
So are elks larger than gazelles?
They're larger than gazelles. They're larger than a deer.
Okay.
They're smaller than a moose. They're bigger than a deer, and they can actually move pretty good.
I like it.
They are imposing animals.
Do they have antlers? The males, do they have antlers?
Oh, they have big time antlers.
Okay,
Yeah,
I can get on board with that. Okay, because you remember the tight ends block, and the elks with the antlers, they kind of do the head button thing, right? Which is kind of what tight ends have to do, and they run. I'm on board with the elk. That's pretty good.
I like it.
Yeah. I played tight end in high school, and that's my favorite position to watch during games. Besides everything else, wherever the ball's moving. But
of course,
tight ends, and I'd love to be considered an elk. Anyways, with that being said,
I'm on board.
I wanted to thank you guys and whoever's idea it was for the greatest plays. I had a really cool experience a couple weeks ago. Well, was it last week? I think it was last week or the week before. My dad was in town. He came down for a visit, and it was awesome sitting on the couch together and going through the red bracket and having him pick the plays that he really liked.
That's great.
It was really neat to see how much of a fan he is of Bill McConkey. Anyways, he loves Bill McConkey and that 86 run, and then also Bavaro, too, with the 90 run and all his career in the 80s.
Yeah, so right now, by the way, real quick, Jay, I'm sorry. Right now, the gray bracket is up for the folks that haven't voted. Go to giants.com/bracket. Go to the gray bracket. We're in our final four right now, it looks like, if I'm not mistaken here. From what I'm seeing is correct. We have the Cruz 99-yarder. We got the Tynes game winner against, I'm guessing that's the Packers in the 07 championship game. We have the Seahorn pick versus Philly, which is really one of the most unbelievable plays you'll ever see. Then another special teams play of the Matt Barr winner against San Francisco in the NFC title game. So those are the four plays that we have up there right now in the great bracket. Go ahead, Jay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Because I was going to talk about those plays in particular and just giant kickers over the years. Because I voted for both kickers. Because I love Jason Sehorn. That play is amazing. The Cruz play is awesome. But those two kicks to get the teams to the Super Bowl in 07 and in 90. I mean, the Giants have always had really good kickers during their runs. And I was wondering, especially with Lawrence Tynes, is there any consideration of getting him into the Ring of Honor? Because he did it twice. He got him through two runs, 07 and 11. I just wonder if that's a consideration.
I don't know how those decisions get made. You'll see eventually when we do our top 100 players where Lawrence Tynes appears in that list, and you can see where all the other Ring of Honor people are on that list. Yeah. Compare where he is in that list with where the other Ring of Honor guys are, and then you can kind of come to that decision. But I think for I think that's a tough go because his career with the Giants. I'm trying to think how many years was Tynesy here? About 6 years, right? It's just tough if you only have a 6-year career with the team to kind of get into the Ring of Honor of a 6. Was it 6 years, Matt?
6 years.
That right?
But the 2 Super Bowls.
That's tough. But he had the 2 Super Bowls, and he did have the big kick against Green Bay, and he had the kick against San Francisco as well. So I see where you're coming from there. I'm not sure that's going to work out for Lawrence Tynes. Pardon me.
I know it's funny that he was called LT a couple times.
Yeah.
Anyway,
he does rank third.
Question.
He does rank third all time in Giants history in field goals made.
Okay, so who's ahead of him?
Oh.
Pete Gogolak and Brad DeLuzio.
Okay, DeLuzio.
Yep.
Brad DeLuzio.
But those 3 were within 4 field goals made of each other.
Really?
Yep.
Huh, that's interesting. I wonder where he is on the points list. And he's probably fairly.
And Tynes did it in significantly fewer games than the others.
No, look, I love Lawrence is a great dude. Whenever he's here, we always chat. He's a great dude. Love Lawrence Tynes. He showed a lot of, kicking that field goal against Green Bay after missing those earlier in the game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was incredible mental toughness. Last question I had just was about the middle linebackers or off-ball linebackers, whatever we want to call them.
Sure.
And looking at it sounds like with the Giants, they're going to have Burns and Thibodeau on the end. You'll have Dexter, and then one of the other defensive tackles will win out that spot next to him. So there's your front 4.
In nickel, yeah. Because I think Jay in base, I think they'll be in a 5-man front in a lot of their base stuff, but nickel they'll be in most of the time, and that would be their front, correct?
Okay. Yeah, so that's what I figured. It's me mostly nickel because I was wondering, besides Bobby O and McFadden, is there anybody? Because I'm looking at McFadden's skill set is very much. I just don't know who if they had a third linebacker, who that would be. And Simmons, I like Simmons a lot. His skill set's just very different. Actually, could be pretty good in this system, but I'm just curious. How's Darren Beavers looking? The new guy Adams they brought on, and then I think they had a couple rookie free agents. But just how's that group looking?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. If you have to ask me, Jay, and I think it's a great question, and we're going to actually talk about this when we do our position rankings. Citak and I actually just having this conversation on the field earlier today. It's actually funny you brought it up. That once you get past those 2 starters, if I had to guess who the primary backup was at that off-ball linebacker spot, I'd say maybe Carter Coughlin or Darian Beavers, I guess would be my guess, with Isaiah Simmons kind of being that more coverage type hybrid player. But if you want straight linebacker, I'd probably lean Beavers or Coughlin, I guess. But I think that's one of those spots that I think in this system, which is very different than Winks, there's going to be a real nice competition for those linebacker spots. And for a guy like Carter Coughlin, who we know what a good special teams player he is, that's going to go a long way for him.
Yeah, Carter Coughlin was the guy that I was going to bring up here. Also, Matthew Adams, I feel like, they brought him in, obviously, because he's had a lot of success on special teams throughout his career, but he's a linebacker. So I think they think that he can at least compete for one of those linebacker positions on the roster.
And a veteran, in his 7th year in the league.
Yeah, he's been around. He would be the veteran of that group. And then we have the rookie, Darius Muasau.
Yep.
Who obviously rookie 6th-round pick. I don't think they're just going to immediately throw him right into the fire, but he's looked pretty good so far in these spring practices. I think he's good coverage linebacker. He's shown. I've seen him run step for step with running backs, some tight ends, and he's during team drills. So I think that clearly is going to be one of the big open competitions to see who is going to take those backup linebacker spots behind Okereke and McFadden.
Well, very good. Well, I appreciate it, guys. Have a great day, and go G-Men.
Good stuff.
Thanks, Jay.
Is it all right if I admonish Giant fans for a second? Am I going to get in trouble for that, or can I?
Go for it.
Go for it. I really don't like the fact that Beckham's catch is what came out of the blue bracket in the bracket challenge. Not happy about that.
I mean, if we're talking about just the play itself and not the circumstances around it, it's hard to argue against that play.
Yeah, but the circumstances around it matter. It's a regular season game that the team lost. It's not the best play in Giants history. It's the greatest play in Giants history. All right? Greatest implies that it's important to the team and the organization as much as it is an amazing play.
So which play did you think deserved to get out of that bracket?
I would have picked probably the Ingram play, because it's Mark Ingram in the Super Bowl, 3rd and 13, catches the ball, runs around 6 different people to get the first down, which sets up, by the way, the field goal that wins the frickin' Super Bowl. Kind of important play. And he did make like 6 people miss on the run after catch. It's a really good run after catch. That got knocked out by Beckham's catch in the semifinals. And then I would have taken Bavaro's carrying 1849ers on his back against the, in 90. Like, that worked, or was it 89? I forget. But that's another play where, 86. That was an 86 play. Pardon me. Sorry. That's another play where, again, you're going against a rival. It's a game you win. Like, Ronnie Lott's on the field. Like, it's a really big, important play in a very important game. So, sorry, those two. And look, I know there's going to be bias because one's more modern and the younger fans.
I was going to say recency bias.
There's a lot of recency bias there, 100%. But the Ingram and Bavaro play should have both knocked the catch out. So, sorry, just what I think.
Hey, you're entitled to your opinion.
Did you vote?
I did vote.
Who did you vote for?
In this bracket, actually, I did not vote in. I believe this was the first.
That was the first one.
First bracket. I don't think I voted in this one.
Well, would you have voted for the catch? What would you have done?
I mean, the catch definitely deserves to be in the Final Four.
I had no problem with it making some progress there. That's fine.
See,
Oh, by the way, I would have had the Lawrence Taylor one-handed sack. One-handed catch versus one-handed sack. I'll take the one-handed sack. Thank you. Anyway.
I think the one play I maybe would have put above the Odell catch was the Bavaro reception. Because I kind of looked at this whole bracket competition as circumstances and the play itself.
Sure, it's obviously, both. I agree, it's both, 100%.
Obviously, I don't think I'm going out on a whim here saying David Tyree's catch has got to be one of the favorites to win it all, because that was combined one of the greatest, if not the greatest play in Super Bowl history, with the fact that it was in the Super Bowl on the biggest stage.
2 broken tackles, 3 broken tackles, 4 broken tackles. He gets to the first down. It's an unbelievable play by Mark Ingram.
Amazing play. But I wasn't alive to actually watch that live.
See, recency bias. These youngins, they don't understand. Where's the Tino? I need the Tino to be on his lawn, in his lawn chair, shaking his fist at Matthew Citak.
I'm surprised.
That's what I need.
I'm surprised the Ingram catch didn't beat Odell's catch just from Paul's voting alone.
He's using like 7 different devices.
Seriously.
Making new emails.
Oh my gosh! Now that would require a lot of technical ability and skill, Pearson.
That's true.
It would be like Giants rule 3, Giants rule 4, Giants are the best 6. Those are all the email addresses that he carried with. 201-939-4513. Let's go to our buddy Wilson in Roxbury. Wilson, what's going on, pal?
Hey, Johnny, man, how are you?
What's up, bud?
How you doing, Wilson?
Johnny, listen, I have a little game for you.
Okay, I love games. What do you got?
Okay, so I have 4 predictions, and I'm gonna give you 4 adjectives, and you can put the adjectives any way you see fit. Okay? So the 4 adjectives are crazy, not so crazy, more than 50% chance, and less than 50% chance.
All right, so crazy, not so crazy, more than 50-50, and then how about sure thing will be the next one?
Okay, less than 50-50 or more. Well, any way you want to put it, Johnny, because you're better than me.
All right, well, okay, Wilson, real quick.
He actually didn't have an adjective for sure thing.
Okay,
said less than 50.
Okay, well, I will put sure thing as a 5th one, and I'm going to label Wilson, before we start, I'm going to label you as a caller as crazy. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
All right, so listen. All right, so here are the crazy ass things. Number 1, Daniel Jones will be in the conversation for Pro Bowl. Number 2, the Giants will make the playoffs. Number 3, either Philadelphia or Dallas miss the playoffs. And number 4, both Dallas and Philadelphia miss the playoffs. Rank them any way you want, baby.
Okay, here we go. I'll go backwards. Both Dallas and Philly missed the playoffs. I will label as crazy.
Yep.
That's the one I think is crazy. I would say either. You agree with me on that side, Ty?
Yes.
All right.
Definitely.
I would go either Dallas or Philly missing the playoffs. I'll put that as not so crazy.
Okay. Oh, I didn't have that. Okay, I didn't have that one.
I'll go not so crazy for that. Or I was between that and less than 50-50.
That's what I'm considering for those two as well.
So Dallas and Philadelphia missing the playoffs is less than 50% for you?
I think less than.
I think for one of them missing the playoffs, you know what? I will put that at less than 50-50.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because look, I think those two teams are still two of the more. You know,
no, I know.
I think they're top 5 or 6 talent-wise in the conference.
Yeah. But I just have this weird feeling, Johnny, that one of them is going to take a step back. It's going to come back to the pack. I just have this crazy feeling.
Well, Wilson, they could come back to the pack and still make the playoffs. Like I think, like if you listen to the show last week when Paul and I did our teams that I think would do worse, I picked Dallas. So remember, they won 12 games last year. I could see them winning, 9 or 10 this year, but still figuring out a way to get in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean the Giants made the playoffs 2 years ago at 9 wins.
Yeah,
so it's definitely possible.
Do you imagine what Christmas gift that will be if Dallas misses the playoffs and we make the playoffs? I mean, my God.
Well, Wilson, I'm happy you said the second part of that because I'm never one of these people that takes pride in other teams failing if your team doesn't do it. So, if the Giants don't make it, then, the Eagles didn't make it either. Now I feel good about myself. That's not something that I do. But if the Giants make it instead of them, to your point, that matters. I had all these Knicks fans, throwing parties that the Pacers got swept by the Celtics. It's like, guys, they just beat you. They knocked you out of the playoffs. Come on. It is what it is.
I know, but, Johnny, we've been in misery for so long.
No, I get it. I get it.
All right, so anyway. So we got 2 more to go. What do you think?
Say them again, just so I remember what they are.
I think it was Daniel Jones to be in the conversation for the Pro Bowl, and then the Giants to make the playoff. Was it make the playoffs or be in competition for the playoffs?
No. Make it.
Make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think?
Are we allowed to use the same adjectives again?
Yeah. You got 4. You got 4. So
I would say less than. I would say. Can I say 50? I'll say right now, based on what I've seen, I'll say slightly less than 50-50 for the playoffs. For the Giants is where I'll put it. 48%, something like that. All right? I think they got a real shot, but again, they got to prove it to me after a year where you were picking 6th in the draft. I think that's fair. Yeah. And then for Daniel Jones, you know what? I'm going to go not so crazy because I do think they're going to throw the ball a ton this year. He's going to get counting stats. And, again, you said Pro Bowl, not All-Pro, which is a big difference because every year...
Let's not get crazy.
Because every year, Wilson, quarterbacks, they get hurt at the end of the year. They're I don't want to play in the game. And all this thing happens.
Tyler Huntley, the Ravens' backup quarterback, made the Pro Bowl 2 years ago when he started 4 games.
Yeah, so I would put Daniel Jones in either the less than 50-50 or not so crazy category in terms of a potential Pro Bowl, just because you don't know.
For me, I would probably say that Daniel to make the Pro Bowl, I would put it at less than 50-50. I don't think it's drastically less than 50-50, but I guess that's where I would put it. And for Giants making the playoffs, since we don't specify what exactly this means, I'm going to say not so crazy.
Okay.
Because I do think that the Giants this season in 2024, they're going to look more like they did in 2022 than they did in 2023. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that means they'll make the playoffs again.
Yeah, because they could go 9-8 and not make the playoffs for all we know.
Exactly. But I do think last year was just a bit of an outlier season given the just crazy rash of injuries they had throughout the roster.
Yeah, I'm almost willing. And Wilson, I know you can't do this and this isn't fair, but when I evaluate this team, I almost throw last year out, to be honest with you. They were playing at such a disadvantage of so many injuries. I went back and I watched some of it again. I'm like, there's no point. Like there was no point even going back and rewatching the tape. Like
know.
it was like they just had no like that game against the Cowboys and 49ers early in the year. They had zero chance of winning those football games based on what was going on the field. They had zero chance. Their chance of winning the game was like zero, just because of what was going on the field.
No, you could tell from the first 5 minutes that you couldn't do it. But you know what, Johnny? Though I tell you the truth, I was a little more optimistic than you. I had the Giants making the playoffs at like more than 50%.
Okay.
I think I had either Dallas or Philadelphia missing the playoffs. More than 50%.
Well, Wilson, I have a question for you now.
That's
Wilson, I got a question for you. So, if you think it's more than 50-50 Giants make the playoffs, if I made you choose right now, who are your 7 NFC playoff teams?
Okay, I'm gonna go San Francisco.
Okay.
I'm gonna go the Rams.
Okay.
I'm gonna go Detroit.
Okay.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna put Green Bay either way, whether they win.
That works.
Okay, so how many I got?
You got 4, and you don't have anyone from the NFC South and anyone from the NFC East.
Well, at the NFC South, I don't know, whoever wins it.
All right, fine. One team.
I'm going to say the Falcons.
You want to go Falcons?
I'm going to throw them a bone.
I like it.
I'm going to throw them a bone. And then I'm going to put the Giants, and I'm going to put Philadelphia. I have this crazy feeling that Dallas Cowboys are going to plummet it they're going to explode like a balloon.
You know, okay, Wilson, I have a good one for you. If you want to exploding like something, go dead whale. Have you ever heard what happens with whales sometimes when they die?
I think
so. When whales die on the beach, right, and all these gases build up inside the whale, eventually they build up to the point where like the dead whale will explode.
Okay, so
true.
You see that? That's why I call you guys. See, now I learned.
So you learned something, right?
You can't
exploding whales.
We can't.
Big animal show.
So this is
a big animal show.
Hey, listen. You can tell it's June. So.
That's very true.
Hey, listen, guys. I appreciate you putting up with me today. So, thank you.
Thank you, Wilson.
Right. Okay. Well, but apparently there's a big video on the internet about the sperm whale exploding.
Yeah, we don't need to.
No, we don't need to see that. But I'm not going to play it. But apparently it's there. Sperm whale. Apparently.
Pearson, is this the most animal talk on the show in at least the last couple of years?
I would say yes. I feel like we have had these animal chats before, though.
Elk's pretty good. I'm a big animal guy. So.
I do like the elk comparison. That was a good one.
Yeah, because got the horns, it blocks, it does like the battering rams with the head, and it could run fast too. I thought elk was actually perfect. I like elk better than bear.
Yeah, that was a very good.
Maybe
call.
bear could be a fullback. How do you think about that?
Yeah, bear pass.
Not bad. Bear pass.
I like warthog for fullback.
Ooh, warthog's pretty good. Okay. Yeah. Almost like a wild pig, right? That's pretty good. I do like that. They got the tusks too. They could do some damage with those. It's pretty good.
I think of Pumbaa every time I think of a warthog.
Do you want to sing a little Hakuna Matata for me right now?
I did walk down the aisle to Hakuna Matata.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did. It's one of the only things I requested at the wedding. I'm like, I want to walk down to Hakuna Matata.
Why?
I like the Hakuna Matata. It means no worries.
All right, I like it. I feel like you should have got married in a tropical setting, though. I feel like that's a good like tropical setting walk down the aisle song.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been nice.
No worries. You're in like this great. I mean, no, you guys had a great wedding venue, but yeah. I mean, that's pretty good. Walking down, I'm assuming it's the original version, not this bogus new real live.
Well, first of all, it was just not even acapella. Yeah, it was just strings, just strings. Instrumental.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I can see that. That makes sense.
I had to convince my wife to let me, but I ended up winning that one as one of the few arguments, not even arguments, but slight battles that I actually won when it came to the wedding planning.
It's funny, right before the bride walked down the aisle at the wedding I went to last weekend, they played an instrumental version of Buy You a Drink by T-Pain.
You know what show, and occasionally I'll walk through while my wife is watching it. You know the Bridgerton show?
Yeah.
They take a lot of modern songs, so when they do like the balls with like the king and stuff, the orchestras for like the music they adapt modern songs and they play them on the show, and that's what the people dance to.
Did not know that.
No, it's actually kind of cool. Like I walk through, I'm like, is that whatever? And it's like, yeah, it is. How about that? But yeah, that is something they do on that show apparently, which I learned last year. All right, you want to do our position rankings here?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So, do you have yours written down, or are you kind of winging it?
No, I wrote it down.
You wrote it down
during practice.
All right. So, and we chatted a little bit. I don't want to give you too much of what I came up with here. And guys, Piers, if you want to screen those two, you can. I could be convinced either way on these, to be honest with you. But I had a lot of trouble with this. I got to be honest with you, Matt. Like, last year we did this exercise, and I felt it was a little bit easier. This, to me, was very, very difficult, and I was moving things around a lot as I did this. So, I'll start at the top here, and we can kind of go back and forth. My number one is edge. And you have two players, one of which is a Pro Bowl caliber player, one of which you know is a good player in Kayvon Thibodeau, and you have a guy in Azeez Ojulari as your three that you feel has high upside, even though he has trouble staying on the field because of injury. And then Boogie Basham has proven he can be a rotational player. So I feel like you got four guys that you know you can play, three of which have fairly significant upside to them, which is why I think the edge position to me. And by the way, the positions are quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive tackle, edge, off-ball linebacker, safety, cornerback. Those are the 10 categories. So that's why I went edge number one.
Yeah, I have edge number one as well. Following the Brian Burns trade, that immediately became the biggest strength of the Giants, pairing him with Kayvon Thibodeau. We haven't really get to see them fully unleashed at practice yet. That's one of the things I'm most excited for once we get back in July.
Oh, in pads,
for
Burns
training
versus
camp.
Andrew Thomas?
Cannot wait to see that.
That's going to be fun.
You touched on the big points. Those two as the starters, and Azeez Ojulari as potentially more of a situational rusher, which, given just his injury history, maybe that's the role he's best suited for.
Yeah, maybe.
We'll see. But, yeah, I think pretty easily edge number one.
What's up? I'm John Wall.
And I'm CJ Toledano, and we're starting a new podcast presented by DraftKings called Point Game. We're now joined by three-time NBA Sixth Man of the Year, elite bucket getter. Let's please welcome Jamal Crawford to Point Game. King of the Court one-on-one tournament. If they had it back in your prime, do you think you could have took it all?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think I could have took it all, but I think I would have shocked a lot of people. I think Kobe and everybody in their prime, Kobe would win a one-on-one contest.
Yeah, because you got to think he's going to guard. He don't care about guarding.
He's going to guard.
He's going to guard. Like, you see him in the Olympics, he's going to guard. And then on top of that.
I'm not guarding like that, see that?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sam Cassell to Point Game.
I remember you came out from crying tears. He was in a culture shock. And then he's going through withdrawals about winning.
Remember what I told you? I said, OG, you think I can get paid and go back and play in college because it ain't it?
Check out Point Game with John Wall and CJ Toledano on the iHeartRadio app, DraftKings YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, number two. I'll let you go first with your number two.
Number two, I see, looking at your list, we have the same number two.
Oh, really? You went
as
with
well.
the same one, huh?
I did. Defensive tackle.
Why?
Mainly because of Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence, in my opinion, is now either the number one defensive tackle in the NFL or 1B behind Kansas City's Chris Jones as 1A.
I would put Quinnen Williams in that conversation.
Quinnen Williams,
too.
I would put as those three as the top three. But I do think Dexter is a slight step above Quinnen Williams at this point.
I feel like I'm forgetting one guy. Who's the fourth guy?
I mean, there's like Derek Brown.
No, I wouldn't put him. I wouldn't put one of the Commanders guys in that. Jeffrey Simmons, I think, is close too. He would be the fourth guy for me, but that would be my top tier, I think.
Yeah.
But you're right. Dexter Lawrence he's the best player on the team.
Yes.
He's that good.
He's 26 years old, the best player on the team, one of the best players overall in the NFL, at least on the defensive side of the ball, in my opinion. I mean, last season, or following this past season, Pro Football Focus put out their, top 101 players from the 2023 season. Every position, Dexter Lawrence landed at number 8 in the NFL.
Really?
Yeah. So,
wow.
Mainly, defensive tackle being in number 2 is because of Dexter Lawrence. They're obviously the spot next to him is going to be one of the bigger, training camp battles, competitions to see who earns that spot in the starting lineup next to Dexter Lawrence. I think there are several intriguing players. I've spoke last week about Jordan Phillips. If he can stay healthy, I think he could contribute in a pretty large way, at least to the pass rush.
I feel like he kind of takes almost in some ways the Ashawn Robinson role from last year in terms of number of snaps he's going to play.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'm assuming you're talking about before the Leonard Williams trade or after the Leonard Williams trade? Because Ashawn's playing time went up significantly.
I think probably after the Leonard Williams trade, right?
Okay.
I think him and Nacho probably split those snaps next to Dexter almost equally would be my guess.
I could see that too. And then there's just a couple of very young players between, Ryder Anderson, DJ Davidson, Jordan Riley, and who else?
Who are you most excited about of the young group?
Of the young group, I'm most excited about Jordan Riley.
Yeah, me too.
I was excited about him last year. Obviously, he just did not get many opportunities. And, opportunities, you got to earn them. So, for whatever reason, he didn't see the field a ton last year. Playing time went up a little bit after Leonard Williams was traded.
No, 7th round pick. It takes
rookie 7th round pick. He's not going to go in and play 85% of the snaps as a rookie, but just his physical being, his size, and the few flashes I did see from Riley last year, starting in training camp and then going through the preseason, and then several times when he did get the opportunity during the regular season, he showed that with some guidance, which no coach I'd rather have guiding him than Coach Patterson, he, I think, could step up and at the very least earn himself a decent chunk of playing time.
All right, I'm going to give you my next two here because I couldn't decide.
Okay.
But this is where I landed on my rankings. So I have wide receiver at number 3, which when I started this process this morning, I couldn't believe this is where I landed because you don't have anyone, you don't have a Pro Bowler in the group, right? You don't have a CeeDee Lamb or an A.J. Brown or even a Devontae Smith, right, at this point, right? You hope the league neighbors can become one of those guys, but he hasn't proven he's one of those guys yet. But if you look at the group, you feel really good about your top 4, right, in some way, shape, or form. Darius Slayton is your 60 to 65 catches for 700 yards in the books every year, does it consistently. Neighbors is your high upside guy. Hyatt's got speed. Wandell showed a lot last year as a slot. So you feel really good about your top 4. You have a set of larger receivers that'll get that spot, whether it's Hodgins or Allen Robinson or Miles Boykin. Whichever guy ends up earning that spot, they'll take it. And then, you figure out after that who the rest of your group is, right? You have a special teamer potentially, an Isaiah McKenzie that you could slide in there. It's a good group where you have some high-end talent at the top with Malik Neighbors. You have some veterans you can count on and are solid like Hodgins and Slayton and Allen Robinson. You got guys that can play different roles that I think fit into different spots. So put all that together. That's why I have wide receiver at 3. And it was close with safety. And I couldn't believe I had safety at 4 when I started this list either, but that's where I came up with it. And you feel good about Pinnock. Newbin's a 2nd-round pick. Belton showing a little bit. So you have 3 guys that you have a decent amount of confidence in that spot. Nick McLeod can slide to safety if he has to as well. So that's another veteran. Jalen Mills is a veteran you feel good about at the safety position. So it's a lot of that has to do with the depth there to me, even though you don't have that one guy that is a Pro Bowler right now. And that's why the receiver and safety spots kind of slid into me at 3 and 4.
Yeah, I can have the same thing.
Do you really?
I do.
Wow,
indeed.
That's surprising.
I do indeed. Yeah, not much to add about what you said about the receivers. I think Wandell Robinson seems to be a pretty popular pick by a lot of people, and I'm talking about outside of even Giants reporters. I've seen some national outlets and stuff pick Wandell Robinson as a breakout player for this season. I think we began to see it last year once he really got back to 100% following the torn ACL he suffered as a rookie. Even earlier this offseason, CeeDee Lamb was on, I think it was Micah Parsons' podcast, and he was asked to pick some of the top wide receivers in the NFL. And he named his top 5. It's the 5 that, you'd probably expect it to be in there. And then he went out of his way to be also look out for that Wandell Robinson in New York.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
he was I forgot exactly what he said, but something among the lines of the way he runs routes is just very impressive. So I'm very high on Wan'Dale Robinson this year, finally heading into a season 100%, which we haven't seen.
Well, it's his first real NFL offseason, right? Because as a rookie, it's not a real offseason because you're doing all the draft stuff. And then last year he was hurt.
Yeah. So I'm very excited to see what Wan'Dale can do this year. Obviously, Malik Neighbors we've seen it in flashes during these spring practices, but he's going to provide a big boost to the offense overall, but especially the wide receiver room. You can just see every time he runs a route, gets the ball in his hands, you can just see the big playability he has, the speed that he has, agility, hands. He's got it all. He's literally exactly what you would want in a receiver, and especially after seeing so many of these wide receiver contracts that have been handed out this offseason in particular. I mean, Justin Jefferson today is the latest.
$35 million a year.
It's insane.
Highest paid non-quarterback in football.
I feel like we're going to begin talking about the wide receiver position sort of like the way we talk about quarterbacks, in that it's going to be key to get a stud receiver on a rookie contract and try to win during that window before you have to pay that guy, now north of $30 million a year.
Well, if anyone ever needs to know about what the NFL is right now, the highest paid position group is guys that rush the passer, and the second highest position group is the guy the passer throws the football to.
Yep.
So if anyone doesn't believe this is a passing game and that's what teams worry about, just look who's getting paid.
Yeah, exactly. And,
And about the safeties, I know you're real big on that. I thought you might have the safeties a little bit higher than the receivers because I know you love the safety group.
I do love the safety group, and I was deciding which one of these two deserve 3 and 4, and I went with the receivers just because Malik Neighbors, I think, obviously is going to do more for the wide receiver room than Tyler Nubin, I think, will do for the safety room. But I say that, but at the same time, as you just mentioned, I'm very high on this group of safeties. Going into last year, I was very high on Jason Pinnock. He was one of my popular choices for a potential breakout player. And obviously he didn't have, the greatest season ever, but considering what he had done up to that point in his career,
good year last year.
It was almost like a breakout year. I mean, first time he saw significant playing time, he played almost every snap until he got hurt, late in weeks or halfway through week 17, and then he missed the regular season finale. So I'm big on Jason Pinnock. I think Dane Belton has done a good amount with the limited opportunity he's gotten in his first 2 seasons.
You love you some Dane Belton.
I do, because every time he gets on the field, the ball ends up in his hands. Whether he's recovering a fumble, whether he's intercepting a pass, the ball just seems to go to him no matter what. And again, that's another guy that hasn't gotten a chance to play significant snaps at safety. And I don't necessarily know if he will again this year, because the third guy in the group that I'm very excited about is Tyler Nubin. And I've spoken about him a little bit these first 2 weeks of OTAs, but the biggest knock on Tyler Nubin going into the draft was his speed. He ran his 40 time was around 4.6, give or take a couple milliseconds. And I guess, you want your safety to be a little bit faster than that, I guess.
Kyle Hamilton worked out just fine.
Yeah, we see so many safeties that, ran around that same time.
Safety's more of a mental position than a stopwatch position.
But
anyway.
I mean, obviously the Giants spent the 47th pick on Tyler Nubin anyway, so it's not like he dropped that far. I'm just saying his on-field production, if he had ran, in the 4.4s, he might have been a first-round pick instead of midway through the second. That's all I mean by, knock on his speed.
All right,
but and Jalen Mills too. I think he's just going to add some veteran experience to that group.
I'm going to take a quick pause here on our list because Brian Alabama wants to talk about Dexter Lawrence, who we just mentioned in the defensive tackle ranking. So, Brian, go ahead.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, actually, what I was going to mention about Big Dex is y'all were talking about Elks and Bears, and what about Dex at fullback in just have to have 1 yard situations, games close, game situation, needs the offense to stay on the field. I think we really losing Saquon. I don't know, how our short game is going to be. What are your thoughts?
So basically, you want him to play the William Refrigerator Perry role is basically what you're looking for.
I don't know that I'd hand it off to him or just have him clear the way.
Yeah, you know what? Look, Brian, I'm sure Dex would love it.
He definitely
I'm sure he would absolutely
No
love
doubt
it.
he would do it.
And I think he'd be good at it too. Oh gosh, help me out. Who was the tiny little fullback who also played defensive tackle here? The guy I'm talking about?
I do.
Yeah, what is his name? He was the Pacific Islander, and I can't remember the guy's name. Oh goodness. He played defensive tackle like 240 pounds. It was Pat Shermer, right? Pat Shermer era? Oh, God, this is killing me. I can't remember the guy's name. Now, look, Brian, I'm sure fans are screaming at home, he's going to get hurt. What are you doing? Look, Brian Dable's creative. Would it shock me if they use him in that way? At some point, it wouldn't. I haven't seen it in practice or on the field at all to confirm that they would. But I think it's interesting, and I like thinking outside the box. And if you're going to put him back there, and I'm trying to remember, one team in the NFL playoffs put their defensive tackle back there as a fullback.
I feel like it must have been the Lions.
It really feels like
they had the
Lions
offensive linemen
but
lined up all over the place.
Yeah,
this season.
Brian, interesting. Would it shock me if we saw that once? No, but I've seen no evidence that they're going to.
I would say if I am a opposing defender, Dexter Lawrence is across the NFL just about the last person I would want to see lined up in the backfield at the fullback position.
And by the way,
whether he's touching the ball or not, that would scare me.
And Brian, thanks for the call. Appreciate it, man. Good stuff. That's the bear. Defensive tackle, bear.
Yeah.
They can move in a straight line. They're a little bit wider. They're big.
Dex.
Big paws. They knock people around with their big claws and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bears defensive tackle. That's where the Bears go. See, we're getting there. Slowly but surely, we're going to get an animal per position. I'm going to make the whole show out of this. All right. Let's go to Marco in Connecticut before we wrap it up, and then we'll go through the rest of our list here. Marco, what's up?
Hey, what's up, John? What's up, Matt? How you doing?
We're doing well.
Doing?
Good. How you doing?
Great. Before I get into my question, is there a training camp schedule that's been released yet?
No, we do not have it yet.
Not yet.
We don't have it.
Trust me, Marco.
Right,
I would love to know when training camp starts so I can plan my off days and my vacation.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we're looking to get out there this year with the kids, so
nice.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, and by the way, Marco, if you do come down, hit me up on Twitter. Let me know, and I'll come say hi.
I appreciate you, John.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will. A question around. So I'm not. It's not specifically if Kafka's calling plays or Dayball's calling plays. I'm curious about this. Let's just say hypothetically, Dayball is the primary play caller this year.
Okay.
And it's his offense. He's the play caller, right? I'm just curious, like in general, and I like Kafka, right? Why would Kafka be in the fold? Like, why would he even be? Why would he be in the? Why not, like, with Shea Tierney being involved in Buffalo and Dayball, that's his offense. Tierney was involved there. I don't understand that. That's why, like, I know a lot of the reporters are saying, well, is Dayball on the headset or not? I mean, to me, it just doesn't make sense to even have Kafka here if he's not doing that to some degree.
Well, what Kafka brings, Marco, and I can tell you, I think they love the fact that he came from a different offensive system and he brought different concepts and ideas from that system that they've integrated into the offense. And I know for a fact that has happened. Kafka has brought plays with him that they have installed that Dable did not bring with him from Buffalo. He brings another approach to it. He's also the only guy in that room that's played quarterback in the National Football League. And I think that's valuable to have somebody that's played the position to deal with your quarterbacks, to deal with the offense, and to give another different perspective when you're collaboratively putting this game plan together. And I think, while Dable's calling the plays and, whatever the play calling situation was last year, it still isn't exactly clear exactly how that went down all year. It's a collaborative process putting the game plan together. And I think they really value the intelligence and the perspective that Kafka brings in that process, even if he might not be the one calling the plays into the headset at the end of the day. He's still going to be part of the guy that puts the play sheet together, where in this situation we have this group of plays, this situation we have that group of plays, things of that nature. And I think they really value him in that way. And I think he's looked at very positively around the league in that way too, where people understand that he understands offense and can help build a game plan that way.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look, he's been here for 2 seasons and he's gotten how many head coaching requests for interviews after the first 2 seasons here. So clearly around the league, there are other teams, other executives, front offices that respect Kafka. And you brought up, the fact that he comes from another offense. Not only does he come from another offense and bring an offensive system, but he comes from Andy Reid's system. Andy Reid, has got to be considered one of the best coaches at this point ever.
What's offensive
one of the
coaches
best
in history of the
offensive
league?
coaches in history.
Yeah.
Kafka spent 4 or 5 years with him in Kansas City, learning under him. So not only did he bring another offensive system, but he brought an offensive system that has had just a ton of success in the last 10, 15 plus years.
Matt, respectfully, my only pushback on that is
pushback. It's all good. That's why we're here.
Yeah, but he was getting these interviews when he was the play caller. Now, I remember when Eric Bieniemy was interviewing every year. The asterisk on Bieniemy was, well, he's not calling the plays in Kansas City, and there's other stuff about Bieniemy. Now he finally left and went to Washington. But I believe you. I think teams. Seattle proved it this year. They want Kafka in a room. He's valued. If they can get insight into the Daboll system, I think teams would like to do that. I'm just curious from a career perspective. If I'm Kafka, why come back to a team when I'm not the play caller? It's not my offense. And I don't know. It just seems like a little bit of a dead end, and it could be proven wrong. It could be a long season, but I think it's going to be major. I think Daboll's really going to have to go out of his way to give, and he's done this before, give him kudos in press conferences and practices, because this can't be like a Belichick situation in New England where you never heard from the assistants and it was quiet. Because a guy like Kafka is young.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
If it's turning over to Daboll, that's all I'm saying.
Well, yeah, Morgan, I think there are two things. Remember, he went down to the incubator 2 weeks ago when they had the owners meeting down there, and he went there, and he was the guy from the Giants. He met with owners and did all the stuff to kind of get on that head coach track. Number one, and number two, we actually just saw a situation you described this year. The Tennessee Titans hired Brian Callahan to be their head coach. He didn't call plays.
Right.
As the offensive coordinator for where he came from. So, Marco, I totally get your perspective of where you're coming from, and it makes sense. But I do think we're seeing different ways, and appreciate the call, different ways to go about this, and it doesn't necessarily always have to go down that same path.
Yeah, and I mean, why Kafka would want to stay here, I believe Marco brought up. I mean, he was given a title promotion. He's now
he was on the contract. He got a raise.
Assistant head coach, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
associate head coach.
And even first of all, we still don't know for sure who will be calling the plays. Daboll said that would be a decision that's made later in the summer.
Correct.
And even if it ends up being Daboll, that doesn't mean that Kafka's not going to be involved with the offense. He's still going to be heavily involved. The offense that we've seen the last 2 years has been a combination of what we saw from Brian Daboll in Buffalo and what we saw from Mike Kafka's days with the Chiefs. It's not fully just Brian Daboll's offense. It's obviously heavy influenced, and I would say leans more towards, I guess, what we saw in Buffalo than what we saw in Kansas City.
Sure.
But there's still a pretty good amount of Kafka's influence that's on the offense. And even if Daboll ends up calling the plays, Daboll is still the head coach. He's going to still have to spend time with the entire team, which is going to mean that someone is still going to have to lead the offense during those times and command the room, and that's what Mike Kafka is going to do.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a lot of value there, and I love the fact that he comes from a different offensive system. I think he does bring a perspective that's different than maybe what Shea Tierney and Brian Daboll have coming from Buffalo.
He's just such a smart guy. His football IQ is through the roof.
And again, he played quarterback in the league. I do think that's important, and it's valuable for coaching up a guy like Daniel, guys like Drew Lock, guy like Tommy DeVito, who's been in that position, right, and has played that position at full speed in the NFL. I think that does matter, and I think that certainly brings.
I feel
a
like
lot
we
of
see
value.
a good amount of backup quarterbacks end up going down the coach track and having successful coaching careers.
All right, what's number 5 on your position? Let's finish this up.
Number 5, I had the offensive line.
Oh, so did I. Seriously?
At some point, we got to start having some differences.
I think we will soon. No, but look, it's the depth here that gets me excited, Matt. And then that's kind of what I feel good about, where I know there were some questions here or there, but the two guys you have questions about were high draft picks, and they're young, and you hope that they improve. That's Schmitz and Neal.
Yep.
But you have Illuminor who can play guard or tackle. Runyon's a good addition. Andrew Thomas you like. Stinney and Schlotman have both started games in this league. You have 2 other young guys in Azudu and McKeithen sitting there too. You hope that maybe you get something out of them. I know it's crazy to think after last year that the offensive line is 5th, but who would you have ahead of them?
Yeah.
Like, it's tough.
I mean, that was the position group that the Giants spent the most resources on during free agency.
Right.
Clearly, the front office realized we need to do some work on this group, and they did. They not only signed the 2 top market guys. Well, Runyon was for a decent amount of reported money, but as you said, they also signed guys for depth. I mean, Aaron Stinney is a guy that started 14 games for Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Like if he's called upon, he can step up and give you some solid guard play, which is something that, I guess last season, just given the rash amount of injuries they had on the offensive line,
there was no solid guard.
There was no depth. The depth got depleted immediately.
Correct.
And I'm also just most excited to see a healthy Andrew Thomas.
Yeah.
2 years ago, we saw what that could be.
And I want to see a healthy Evan Neal. People don't like to talk about the fact that he's played hurt a lot the last 2 years. But anyway, number 6 for me, linebackers.
Same.
Bobby, okay, guys, we did not.
What even is
this
exercise?
I know. Real quick, Bobby Okereke is one of the better players in the team. You feel confident as Micah McFadden is your second guy, and we already talked about this earlier in the show, so we won't belabor the point. The depth here is why it's not higher. If you felt better about the depth, I can see linebackers ahead of offensive line, maybe even ahead of safety, because you feel better about the second starter, but I just don't know what's after the top 2 guys. Same page?
Yeah. I will say, I just think Bobby, basically after last season, played himself into top 10 linebacker in the league.
Really good player.
Consideration.
Great leader, too.
In the conversation, at least.
All right, who's number 7? What position 7 for you?
For 7, I feel like this is where we're going to start to differ. I have cornerback.
Okay, I have quarterback.
Okay. So just real quick, I have cornerback here, and I know some people are probably going to disagree with me on this one. I expect Deonte Banks to take a big step this year. I think he showed flashes last season, and obviously year 1 to year 2 is probably the biggest jump you see from guys, and especially at the cornerback position. I mean, Coach Dable spoke about this the first week of OTAs, how Deonte in year 2 just looks more comfortable. He knows what's going on, obviously more so than his first offseason. So big jump from him. I like Drew Phillips in the slot. If he ends up winning that starting slot position, I think he was one of the best slot corners in this draft, and he's played in the SEC. He's had high competition. I think he was a very good addition. Obviously, the second cornerback spot opposite Deonte Banks right now, Cordell Flott seems to be the leading candidate for that. He'll have to take a big jump, but I like Nick McLeod. I think McLeod has shown that he's capable of being if not a starting corner, at least a corner that's getting significant amount of snaps each year. And then there's just a couple of other guys on the younger side that I think have potential. Trey Hawkins, I mean, we remember how great he was during training camp. Obviously, once the season started, the fact that he was a 6th-round rookie started to show.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think that he could turn into a solid contributor at this level.
Yeah, and David Long's a veteran too that they brought in.
Yes.
That can be a little veteran safety lad there. I have corner at 9. So that's where I have corner, just because I feel like that's a weak link position. We can have one really good corner. All right, well, the team's just not going to throw at that guy. I don't throw at everybody else. And I haven't seen enough from everybody else yet to feel great about it. I think they have enough guys in the room. They're talented enough, but we just haven't seen it yet in games. So we got to see how that goes. So I put quarterback at 7 because Daniel Jones has been very encouraging to me in the spring. He's running around. I think if they weren't being super cautious, I think he's more than physically capable of taking team reps now if he wanted to, but I think they're doing the smart thing and they're holding him out of it. But you have Drew Lock, who I think you feel okay about as a backup. And again, I just think, and then Tommy DeVito, who started games and won games for you last year, is your 3. So I feel like the depth there is good. And Daniel has looked healthy, which is why I kind of have that at number 7.
I had quarterback at number 8.
Okay.
For most of the same reasons you just said.
So I'll give you my number 8. Then I have running back there.
Okay.
Just because I feel Devin Singletary is a starter that I know I can rely on. And frankly, he's going to get most of the snaps at this point, in my opinion. The problem is that if I knew who the backup was, folks, I'd probably have running back a little bit higher. We talked about this at practice today.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Eric Gray? Is it Tyrone Tracy? Is it? It's not Gary Brightwell. He got let go last week,
Deshaun
obviously.
Corbin?
Is it Deshaun Corbin? Like, I don't know. Is it Turbo Miller? Like, I don't know. So that's why I have running back at number 8, just because I don't know what's going on behind Devin Singletary.
Yeah, I have running back at number 9, basically for the same reasons. Now, I do think, and I've spoken about this guy a good amount the last 6 weeks. I do think that Tyrone Tracy could end up being not only a contributor, but like a good contributor to the offense as soon as this season. He's not. I don't think he's going to overtake Devin Singletary to be the starting running back. But I think even by the end of training camp, maybe he could win the backup spot. We could see him contributing on special teams, on kickoff return.
It's going to be the mental stuff with him and figure out the mental part of the position.
For sure.
That's what will hold him off the field. Physically,
Yes.
he has all the tools to do it.
Yes. I mean, again, as we've spoken about, he's only had one season playing the running back position. And there's a big difference between playing in college and playing in the NFL, as we all know. So he will definitely have to prove, especially things like pass protection, that he can, keep up with the other guys out on the field. But yeah, that's why I have running back at number 9.
All right, and then we both have the same number 10 then, and that would be the tight end position, mostly because we don't know what's going on with Darren Waller. We did see the reports this morning. Hopefully we'll know something next week if those reports are accurate. We don't know if they are or not. And if he does end up retiring or not being back with the Giants, you have Daniel Bellinger, who is fine, but he's, not your dynamic passing threat. Theo Johnson, the rookie. You got a couple, Manhurts and Stoll as blocking guys. Cager as the receiving. You just, I feel fine about Bellinger as a starter. He's not going to hurt you. He blocks. He's a big guy. He's going to block well when you ask him to block. He can catch balls down the field. He can run. Theo Johnson's unproven. He's raw, like we talked about before. So that's why I kind of had, basically the uncertainty with Waller, I had this group slotted in at 10.
Yeah, the same exact thing here. The only thing I will say is that if Darren Waller does decide to continue playing and he returns to the team for minicamp next week, tight end is moving up this list.
I would
at least put a few spots for me.
Minimum 7.
I was probably going to say
maybe 6.
I was going to say I probably would have tight end moved up to 6.
Yeah.
If Waller returns.
Yeah, I
it's
agree
just
with that.
the fact that, as you said, if he does retire, there's just not a whole lot of experience in that group. The guys that are the most experienced are the guys that have mostly been blocking tight ends. You mentioned Stoll and Manhurts. They're both veterans, but they haven't been called upon to do that much receiving in their NFL careers. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that.
So
one.
we basically, the only differences we had was 7 through 9, and we had them jiggered around a little bit. Otherwise, we were exactly, wow, that's a little depressing, but I guess it shows that we're on the same page, which I guess is good. Citak, good stuff, my man.
Good stuff.
By the way, folks, if you haven't done so yet, there are still tickets available for the June 20th event at the theater at Madison Square Garden. Go to Ticketmaster.com, just search for Giants. It'll be the first thing that pops up. Guys, it's going to be an awesome event. You're going to have Giant Legends there. It's going to be a Q&A, season preview, all sorts of fun stuff. So make sure you go and get those tickets. They're not expensive, folks, and it's not a big theater. So even if you're sitting up high or whatever, which is where a lot of the seats that are left, you're still close. The theater at Madison Square Garden, there's not a bad seat in that theater. I've gone to multiple shows there. It's fantastic. So go Ticketmaster.com and go get those tickets. The proceeds, net proceeds, benefit the Giants Foundation. So go do that. For Pearson Butler and Matt Citak, I'm John Schmeelk. We'll see you next time on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants.
You ever get the feeling the city walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating your soul? You crave wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe chase some elk, fish a private stream. Well, listen up. There's a whole world out there, and finding your own piece of it just got easier. Head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forest, mountains, you name it. Search by acreage, location, the kind of hunting or fishing you dream of. Land.com. It's where the adventure begins.
Zero Foxtrot isn't just a brand, it's a way of life. Founded and operated by veterans, Zero Foxtrot's unique apparel and gear echoes the grit of the warrior culture. Zero Foxtrot dedicates itself to producing content, honoring the sacrifices of forgotten heroes of the past, and connecting history to the present. Embark on a journey with Zero Foxtrot today at zerofoxtrot.com. It's not merely our products, it's about the ethos that we embody. Rugged, resilient, and timeless.